Welcome everyone to the podcast between the independent activist Fra Hughes and the Activist Solidarity Network. Stuart Dinnan. Uh, Fra, you heard the comments from Trump yesterday with Netanyahu. He was talking about moving people out of Gaza. It's been a theme he's been talking about since he came into power. How do you see this developing as we move forward? Do you see any reprieve for the people in Gaza? Do you see any positives coming from the situation? As some people point Trump being the lesser of two evils. What's your thought?
Well, I have to say the first thing is I was actually lying in bed last night, 1 o'clock in the morning. For some reason, I went on to Al Jazeera and then I don't know if it was live or it was a recording, but it was like breaking news that he wanted to cleanse the Palestinian people from Gaza into Egypt and into Jordan. So the first thing I thought was like, having the Palestinian people been through enough, honestly, like 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15, I wish it was 15 minutes, 15 months of a genocide. I mean, they're talking about, he says there's like 1.8 million people in Gaza he moved out. Originally, over 2.3 million. So, like, how many dead and how many injured are we talking about if he's bringing up figures like 1.8 million people have to be moved out? Is he talking about leaving some Palestinians in Gaza? Is this to give them cheap jobs, cheap labour? That'd almost be like the Palestinians in the West Bank, who sadly, in order to get employment, had to go into Israel, and they were actually building the settlements on behalf of the Zionist government. So Palestinians building buildings that are replacing not just their own dwellings, but their future history on the land in Palestine. So the way I look at it is, I think Donald Trump is we talked about this before. He's like he's, what would you call him? A property magnate.
Yeah.
You mentioned that he's a mogul.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I think he sees an opportunity to turn Gaza into some type of Las Vegas in the Mediterranean, like another Monaco, potentially a tax haven. And see, when you put that together with what he's talked about Canada, about absorbing that economically into America, he seems to have it in his head. He can buy Greenland, he can take over Canada, he can destroy the economy of Mexico, and he's back into sanctions on Iran. So I heard a guy from Hamas who said that instead of holding the Israeli criminals to account for the war crimes they've committed in Gaza, he's actually rewarding them by giving them exactly what they want. So what do you think he's at, or what do you think he's up to?
I see it similar. He's a businessman at heart. He's coming in and he's saying this. He could leave a legacy. He sees the envisages a vision for Gaza, quite similar to Jared Kushner, I believe. Jared Kushner's part of his administration.
He's buying up the land and stuff. They're selling them in America in synagogues and other places. Long before they've said we want the people out, they're already selling the land.
Exactly, they're selling it wholesale, so they are in America. There's been several estate sales, and it's been documented. The Gaza Strip and the West Bank, I think they're planning on settlements. Jared Kushner is looking to make a pretty penny, no doubt, from his firm he's a part of, Saudi-backed, Saudi-funded, sorry.
And I think they have commercial interests in Israel already. I think I read that.
Yes, yeah. So I see Trump coming in. He has a bigger plan, but in my mind, it's more of an opportunity in his sense. Like, what can I get out of this? What can I get out of this? What transactional? And as you said, Netanyahu last night when he was sitting, or yesterday when he was sitting with Trump, he was gleaming. He did, as you said, he didn't expect to get what he got.
Exactly what they've got. He's over the moon.
And he was patting Donald Trump on the back. He's saying this is an unconventional president. This is a president that has a plan.
Funny, we all talk about Biden's legacy, as in genocidal Joe Biden. But I think it's part of his ego, where they're massaging his ego. You'll go down in history. And I mean, they're probably selling this to him on several levels. One of them will be, but get the Palestinians out. That'll end all the violence in Gaza. Let's just get them out. And that's the violence ended. He even talked about, like, we can't let it go back the way it was. We can't let these people go back to being, he implied to being bombed and starved and beaten and tortured. So we'll get them all out. So if you look at it from his perspective, get them out. Like, what property developer doesn't want to have a blank canvas to build something on 26 miles of beachfront in the Mediterranean? And it reminds me, because he has his hotels and stuff, this is like a hotelier wanting to get rid of the tenants and upgrade and bring in new tenants, charging more money. Right. So for him, it's a business opportunity. But what just because he wants them to go, Jared, doesn't mean that they're going to go. So
that's true.
What do you think the plan is? Or even talk about bringing in American troops for some reason?
Yeah, so they're bringing in the firms from America, UG Securities, Blackwater,
Mercenaries.
National Academy, yeah. And you heard Trump last night. Well, we'll own it. And I believe he's serious when he says we'll own it. But I don't believe they'll be able to follow through. Like George Galloway said, you have plans and then there's reality. I don't believe Trump will be able to push this forward like he thinks he can, because the resistance in Gaza aren't going to.
There's many a slip between cup and lip, as they say.
Exactly. The resistance in Gaza aren't going, and they have already said this is a recipe for disaster for the region. If he pushes forward with this, I could well see the region going up in flames. Like, we thought this would be a reprieve for the people of Gaza. We thought maybe this would be something that would take the pressure off the people of Palestine in general. But as the new IDF chief has said, this 2025 is going to be a year of war.
And you can see the destruction in Jenin, and 90% of the people of Tulkarm have already evacuated the place. And those diggers that they have, you watch the videos where they're ripping up the roads, so you can't park your car, there's nowhere to walk. It's like going back. They said before about Gaza, we'll bomb it back to the Stone Age. I mean, that's literally what they're trying to do in the West Bank now, and with the settler violence. And the one thing always about the settler violence is, when you watch these people, it's always men. They're always somewhere between 17 and 40. Every one of them, if they're not active IDF members, are on the reserves. So when people talk about settler violence, what we should really be saying is that is the IDF out of uniform. Yep. And sometimes in uniform, doing this.
We've had plenty of documented times where so-called settlers have come out and wearing their IDF uniforms, and they use it as a front to go and then do what they do. Violence on the Palestinians, removing people from their homes, taking over their homes. These people, even if they're using the IOF uniforms as a front, the IOF support them fully and fully protect them in their initiatives to take over the land. Janine, Tulkarm, it's a catastrophe. What we're witnessing is historic, but it's bad. It's we're seeing the complete destruction of a refugee camp, of people that was already displaced from their land.
Yes, in 48 or 67, it's the third Nakba potentially.
Potentially the third Nakba we're witnessing. We watched 23 homes be rigged up and destroyed in Jenin.
I saw a thing of a guy who's a photographer with the Israeli army.
Yeah.
And they give him a detonator, and he's sitting talking away, and he detonates some buildings belonging to Palestinian families. And he's supposed to be their official photographer, and he's taking part in war crimes, but his face is out there.
That sends chills down my spine.
And see, in New Zealand, aren't they talking about people of military age with Israeli passports? They have to fill in a form saying whether or not they've been, what their military thing is, whether involved in war crimes. Yeah. Hopefully that's a start of some kind of kickback. But here, I mean, we're talking about Palestinian resistance in the round. But what about Yemen? What about Hezbollah? What will Iran do if they start putting these people out? Well, Hezbollah, who have taken a bit of a hammering, although it was them that forced the Israelis to the negotiating table because there's so many Israeli soldiers down in southern Lebanon. Yeah. Yemen, I think if they start that, then I don't know. I think the Yemenis have stopped their missile attacks on Israel and in the Red Sea, because as an honourable, moral people, they said so what they're doing, to my mind's right. But what do you think Yemen will do, and what do you think Hezbollah will do, and what do you think Iran will do? So, al-Houthi, the leader of the Ansar Allah, said that they would stop their campaign, because they said, and they had been saying it from the start, as soon as Israel stops their genocide in Gaza, we will step back. But he
said also that if Israel continues with what they're doing in the West Bank,
Sure,
that
he
they would
reserves the
start-
right
They
to
would,
war.
yes, they will.
The way the Israelis reserve the right to
Exactly.
kick it up again.
And in international law,
That's
you know,
true.
what is it all about? It's meant to be about stopping genocides, about stopping these campaigns of extermination. So the Houthis and Nasrallah stand on the right side of history. There's no doubt about it.
But when you look at Rwanda, there's 5 million people murdered in Rwanda, and they weren't just stood by because America or the EU or whoever else was involved in the conflict was backing one particular side, and they could have gone in and stopped that at any time.
Exactly, and it's like, you know, the world's institutions, the institutions that uphold the rules based of the Western rules based order. You know, these institutions for the last century have upheld, you know, the status quo, have been used as tools of empire, the US, to further their interests, to further their goals.
Absolutely,
you know, and when we see what we see today,
formed after the Second World War for the interests of the victors, the Allies who defeated Germany and Italy and Japan. So it's really there. I heard someone say before, the only people you'll ever see before the International Criminal Court are Black Africans and Slobodan Milosevic, because he was against the NATO destruction of Yugoslavia. He tried to protect the state of Yugoslavia before it was balkanized for the exploitation of the resources by the EU and America.
Yeah, right here. Rightly so. Bill Clinton should have been sitting in front of the Hague for his actions.
Tony Blair,
and Tony
George
Blair,
W.
and
Bush,
the officials who sat in the wings, upping them and pushing them forward with this campaign in Yugoslavia. You know, it just gives you a glimpse of the hypocrisy on a global level. You know, you've got the foremost imperialist party, US, who has known nothing but war since its inception, trying to dictate to the world what the world should do in the face of genocide. It's pure hypocritical. It's bare bones telling people
but it's in their Western hegemonic interests for certain, like Syria to be destroyed, like Iraq and Libya and Afghanistan and Sudan and wherever else they have their Machiavellian machinations in Africa and in Latin America. You mentioned the Monroe Doctrine recently, we were chatting about that. But let's, like, what do you think Hezbollah will do? Because Hassan Nasrallah is gone. And I'm not sure he would have accepted a 60-day ceasefire, at the end of which the Israelis were still occupying southern towns in south of the Litani River on the border with northern occupied Palestine. I think if he was still alive, he'd have went the 60th day, start them rockets up again. Whereas they're already talking about allowing until the 18th of February before there's any pushback. And that's not Hezbollah, that's the Lebanese government, I believe, has agreed to allow the Israelis to stay until the 18th of February. And the 18th of February will turn into the 18th of March, and the 18th of March will turn into the 18th of April. And before you know it, they've dug in and they're not going anywhere, and the people won't go back to their homes.
See, they smell blood. You know, Hezbollah did take
they give them a bloody nose as well.
But Hezbollah held them, and without doubt, held the Israelis to a stalemate. They held them south of the Litani River. You know, back when Israel,
they held them right up to the border. They didn't get more than a kilometer.
Exactly. They were in and out. You know, they were going into villages, and they were being pushed back.
Trying to get a foothold, trying to get a bridgehead in order to build on that.
But as you pointed out, as soon as Hezbollah started to become receptive to the idea of ceasefire deal agreement, and they started to pull back, and the Lebanese army started to be brought into the whole thing, and were told that you go and you protect the borders. But then we seen the idea of IOF move in, take up positions, you know, willy-nilly. No
things they couldn't do during the war, they've done during the ceasefire.
Exactly. So
and 1,500 violations, bombings, shootings. They shot all those people trying to go back to their homes.
Actually, we watched women, we watched children, men going to their homes, you know,
as part of the ceasefire.
As part of the ceasefire
by Israel.
But the occupation forces wouldn't allow them, and then they opened up fire, killing 20 odd people. Like, you know, this occupation is a belligerent occupation. It's an occupation against humanity. These people are supremacists to the core. Anyone that still stands and defends the actions of Israel at this time
are as sick as the people carrying out the genocide in Gaza.
And in my mind, they're complicit. And it's, you know, I believe Nain Kassim has ideas, a vision for Hezbollah, but he's a realist, I believe. I believe he's taken the opportunity to regroup, to get the group together again.
Sure.
But my worry comes in where the undermining happens, where US has come in to cooperate, to prop up the Lebanese government, to embolden them to go against Hezbollah, to try and cut Hezbollah down, with their policies, work on cooperation with Israel.
Yeah, Lebanon is a confessional state. So the president comes from the Sunnis, for the sake of conversation. The president's the Shia, and the Speaker of the Parliament is a Christian. When you go back to the Lebanese Civil War, that all goes back to the French being there under the Sykes-Picot Agreement. They called Beirut the Paris of the Mediterranean or whatever. What they did, you had Saudi Arabia, and no, it might have been the UAE and France being the ex-colonial oppressors of the Lebanese, and the Americans going in saying you have to have elections for the president because there's a vacuum in politics. This is also that they could get their man into place. So they got the leader of the Lebanese army, who the Lebanese army is mainly funded by the Americans. It's old American stock that they have. Don't have an air force. They have helicopters and stuff. They're not in any position to stop the Israelis. My concern all along was that if Hezbollah moved up over the Litani River, even if and they're not even allowed in, even if the Lebanese army secured the border with occupied Palestine, what's to stop the Israeli army running over the Lebanese army? And the Lebanese army's job appears to be at the minute to stop their own citizens going back to their homes, almost being Israel's policeman in Lebanon in the short term.
Well, the colonial policies in West Asia from, far back as several centuries ago, this, fast forward to today, this is the manifestations of that. The breakup of the whole region, the cutting up of groups of people.
Balkanization,
yep. This is what caused this whole mess.
And if Israel didn't exist, there'd be no violence anywhere in West Asia.
Exactly. If this campaign, campaign of shipping people out of Europe, because this is what it was an anti-Jewish campaign to get people out of Europe because they didn't want them in Europe, and then move them off to another land. And the Zionists decided, well, Israel's a better place than any. Why not?
So Russian pogroms at the end of the 19th century that led to the first meeting in Basel in Switzerland of the Zionist Congress in 1897, I think. And they looked at the British offered them Uganda. They also looked at Argentina. Madagascar came up twice. Not then, but I was reading something today about Hitler and Himmler in 1940. They had a position of forcibly relocating the Jewish people of Germany to Madagascar, which was part of the French imperialist empire. So when they defeated the French in 1940, they were going, we'll have that island and we're going to put them all into it. It didn't work out, and they went on to the final solution. So what do you think Hezbollah will stand by? I believe from what you said, you don't believe Yemen will stand by. Iran's in a very difficult position.
Yeah.
If they attack Israel and never followed through on True Promise 3, Trump's already come in and put on more tariffs, economically trying to crush them. But with the Iran-Russia alliance, he might think twice about doing anything other than the tariffs. But everything's up in the air. I mean, weeks ago, we can say that the resistance in Palestine and Gaza won. And by that I mean on the 7th of October, some of their ideas were to capture Israeli service personnel to be used in an exchange program for Palestinian prisoners, many of whom have never been charged or brought before a court and are incarcerated in those Israeli dungeons. They wanted to put Palestine back on the map, and they wanted to send a message to Saudi Arabia and other countries involved in the Arab League in order to stop that the Abraham's Accord with the normalization with Israel. So what the Palestinian resistance did was they've ended up exchanging 30 Palestinian prisoners for one Israeli prisoner. They stopped the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and they put Palestine back on the map. So they succeeded in everything that they had hoped to achieve on the 7th of October in 2023. And the Israelis, it's down to Trump.
Yeah.
Trump was the one to pull the rabbit out of the hat. He wanted the hostages released. He wanted to be the man who came in after 15 months of a genocide and got the hostages out. But Israel failed, hasn't defeated Hamas. You saw that with the prisoner releases. You saw Hamas. You saw these Toyota trucks that come up out of nowhere, probably from the tunnels or whatever. You saw an undefeated, resilient, unrepentant, what would you call that? You would call that a body of resistance, just like the French resistance in the Second World War. It's funny how everyone supported the French resistance because they were illegally occupied by the Germans in the Second World War, and they got help from Britain and from America and from the French government in exile with Charles de Gaulle. And yet when it comes to the resistance in Palestine, the only people who seem to be helping are the Yemenis, Syria before it was destroyed, the PMUs in Iraq, and the anti-imperialist Islamic revolutionary government in Tehran. So when you look at that, you can say Hamas has won.
Yeah.
But when you think if they're going to put everybody out, and Syria's fallen, and we don't know potentially what's going to happen next. So what's your view then of the next step?
Well, without a doubt, if Israel's to continue on this trajectory and they're to continue on with what they're doing,
Israel,
they're going to need the full backing of the United States, and without them,
and have had all along,
and without that, as you rightly said, they would crumble within a week or a month.
Absolutely,
these people, this Israel has been propped up for its whole existence. It wouldn't exist.
Started by the British.
The
Balfour Agreement in 1917. And the Americans took over in 1948 when I think the Americans were the first to recognise Israel as an independent state.
I think
self-declared.
Along with the Soviet Union. So
It's not surprising back in the days they were thinking of kibbutz.
Yeah.
And for all you know, there was the recognition of the Holocaust, obviously, and there would be, and yet, sorry to interrupt now, but it's a classic case of, you remember they were doing the Holocaust remembrance?
Yeah.
It was the Russians who liberated Auschwitz and Belsen and some of the other camps, and they're not invited because they've invaded Ukraine, supposedly, their special military operation. Yet Israel can go into Lebanon, it can go into Syria, it can go into the West Bank, and it can go into Gaza. And there's not a dicky bird suitable.
It comes back to the Western rule-based order, it comes back to their goals and their ideas of what they want on the world stage, The US has a vision for a new...
Imperialist colonialism.
Exactly. They have a vision for a new Middle East, quote-unquote, a new Middle East, Netanyahu stated it.
Which won't be peaceful.
It won't be peaceful, and they've made that clear, again, go back to the new IDF chief saying this will be a year of war. And I think he is sounding exactly what the...
He's been put in because he's a war hawk, whereas Gallant was Biden's man, and he was trying to ratchet it down, not escalate it up. And this other guy looks like he's going to go for...
I believe he is sounding the feelings of the people in power right now. He is giving us what they want. He is telling us what they want, and it is war. And
something like 80% of Israeli society wants their hostages released and a genocide to recontinue.
A continuation of the genocide, I can understand. Some people will say the Israelis are isolated when it comes to media and they don't really understand. I disagree with that entirely. They know what's going on.
Well, if we go on social media and watch everything,
they know what's happening.
That's a smokescreen.
Exactly. Right. But you have people in Israel, some of these people who are being told you have to, as a conscription, you have to go on, and they're saying no. And it's giving me chills because I respect that.
Of course.
Fair play to them. It's sad though that majority of Israelis are so happy and willing to go along with the genocide. It is, and this comes back to the whole ideology of which Israel has been built on. The supremacist Zionist ideology.
I think they've brainwashed 2 generations, if not more, from 1948 with this idea of if we don't kill the Arabs, they're going to kill us. It reminds me of kind of the loyalist psychology here. because we were treated as second-class citizens for so long in the north of Ireland, they're worried that by giving equality somehow we'll get in a position of power and do to them what they did to us. And see, just on that, I've met loads of Palestinians. I've never heard one of them ever ask for revenge. I've only ever heard people ask for equality and dignity and the right to exist and the right to have their own state and the right to vote in their own elections and the right to live in peace and security. I've never, ever, ever heard anyone talk the way the Israelis do, mow those people down, their animals, kill the children before they turn into terrorists. And like finally, wasn't it one of the guys, one of the ministers said, or it might have been one of the top rabbis in Israel, there's not one innocent person in Gaza, a population of 2.3 million, 50% of them children, and not one of them's innocent, to include a newborn baby. I mean, what kind of psychology?
Well, this is the type of stuff that they're teaching within the IOF University.
Like,
you know, this is
brainwashing like the Nazis.
Complete brainwashing. You know, it's next level stuff. This is coming straight from the handbook of the Nazis. And when people, you know, a lot of people say, you're being anti-Semitic, you're just throwing, you know, these words around like, you know, but it's true.
If there's a historical comparison, you have every right to use it.
Yeah. Iran, again, when you're talking about Iran, I fear that this campaign is a part of the wider campaign against Iran.
Isolate Iran.
So cut Iran off, isolate it, you know, make it that it's cornered in this part of the region where you hold all the cards and you're basically contained it, just like what they tried to do with Russia, containing Russia and, you know.
They want Israel to be a regional superpower.
Exactly.
So, listen, we could talk about this all day because there's so much to talk about, but we'll maybe get a second episode up and running, and then people can follow on both from what's happening like live, if they go on Press TV. Al Jazeera is very good on Palestine, but it ain't good on anything else. It's not good on Syria, it's not good on Iran. So maybe on our next week podcast, we'll be able to explain, maybe go into in the depth a wee bit further, one or two things.
100% Fra. Look forward to having a chat with you again. This was good, so it was. Everyone, if you could follow Fra on the Independent Activist, as well as myself on the Activist Solidarity Network, it would be very appreciated. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.